And Twitch, wow. So I can start talking now. Oh, that. Usually when you have a picture, you need audio going. At the same time, all this funky stuff going on, why isn't it showing up on YouTube? It should be showing up here live. On that, we had a pretty good show going on today. Of course, there's no news going on, so I'll just blather about the price of tea in China and how pretty the daisies are out or whatever's blooming at the time. Shows you how much I know. Jesse's staring at the screen. That funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday, 11 to 5 on Newswire, on Facebook, Twitch, and Jesse just loves every minute we're on YouTube. Of that, like I said on YouTube when you first fired off, just there's nothing going on today, so we'll talk about how blue or not blue the sky was. There was 12 inches of rain in Moreno Valley. That means there was a drop of rain every 12 inches. That's how much rain it got today. I don't know. They said it's going to get up to 90 degrees by the end of the week. So we shall see if that comes to fruition. Usually, the weathermen take a lot of flack over that, but they're usually 98.7% of the time they're pretty darn accurate of what's going on. But we shall see that. Assemblymember Kevin Kiley will be on later on in the hour to update us on the recall and his and James Gallagher's case that went before the appellate court of the state of California on that, on nixing, the starting of the nixing of Gavin Newsom's draconian executive orders, putting us in a year plus. It's almost going on 14 months since he signed the first. I think it was March 4th. He signed the first emergency order in 2020. In a few days, it'll be 14 months that we've been under the assault of that said Gavin Gulag Newsom going on. But as we usually do, flip up number 4, please. I want to roll this one before we get into slow Joe Biden in his little press conference today. Politically correct. A term used for whiny, oversensitive pansies who need everything sugar-coated for them. I got to thank Debbie Lynn. She posted that. I stole it off of her page on that. Nothing could be further from the truth. A term used for, politically correct. That's what it's becoming. They want to shame you into wearing a mask, obeying orders, opening your wallet to the politicians to let them drain it each and every day. And you wonder why there's too much month at the end of the money. We're going to have to play that song. That I bet you Jesse knows the lyrics by heart. Too much month at the end of the money. I didn't figure you would. We ought to find that. Find that on there. It's a great little old tune. But no, it is. They're shutting you down on that. Why I wanted to segue into that, we went over it with Dr. Kelly Victory. Flopping like a fish out of water, Anthony Fauci was on the Sunday show saying, the CDC is going to come out with some new mask requirements and we're probably going to be returning more to normal. The thought they wanted to put in your head was, oh my goodness, man, happy days are here again. we're going to go back to the way it was before March 2020 when all this crapiola started on that. Well, as it, and I was even thinking, well, maybe Fauci, because we said, Fauci's went full circle before March, the first of the year, masks don't make any difference. Then, maybe making the mask wear is good too. What, a couple months ago? 2, 3, 4, 12 masks? Yeah, more masks the better. Really, masks don't make any difference, especially if you're outside. MIT said social distancing doesn't work inside. No, this, the paradigm's being blown off of there. But this was the first sign when Joe Biden walked out in his press conference today to talk about the new CDC guidelines for mask wearing, which are really infinitesimal amount. If you're fully vaccinated, well, you may be able to exercise outdoors without wearing a mask. As we ran the video of the young teenager running the 880-yard dash up there with a mask on and collapses after she crosses the finish line. She did set a new record, so she didn't give up. I got to give her props for that. But anybody who is wearing a mask while exercising, in my opinion, really needs their head examined. But this is key. Flip up number 4, please. I just want to show the still shot picture of Joe Biden. This is as he walks up to the podium with the mask on. Right away, we know we're in trouble. Because if it's okay, if you've been vaccinated, and CDC and Lord Anthony Fauci is saying, it's infinitesimal that you could spread COVID. Joe Biden's been vaccinated, walking outside, very small crowd of socially distanced reporters outside, which really doesn't make a difference. And even if you're vaccinated, as they said with the social distancing or Fauci said, it isn't. What are we talking? 0.1% difference? But here's old Joe as he goes on the deal, as he's making the announcement of, the new mask requirements, and you thought you were going to be able to don the mask. Ha ha ha.
How it gets transmitted. Earlier today, the CDC made an important announcement. Starting today, if you're fully vaccinated and you're outdoors, you need, and not in a big crowd, you no longer need to wear a mask. I want to be absolutely clear. If you're in a crowd, like a stadium or at a conference or a concert, you still need to wear a mask.
Okay, Joe, explain this to me. If you're fully vaccinated and CDC, Lord Fauci, and the science and the data you're going by are saying infinitesimal, especially if you're outside of spreading COVID. Who cares if you're at the Indianapolis 500 and there's 300,000 plus people there and you're vaccinated, you can't spread it, you can't get it. What flippin' difference is it going to make? And if you've got 200 million shots in everybody with herd immunity and immunity to the people that have had it, that didn't get the shot and everything else, it's got to be pretty close to the whole damn country by now, Joe. So, what is the danger of spreading it? Or if it's going to, like MIT said, your social distancing doesn't work. It's all a bunch of crapiola. There is no science or data or anything. You notice he never puts out, when Trump was out, let's go back to September, June, of 2020, October. When Trump would come out and have a coronavirus press conference, he would even have Lord Fauci and Birx and whomever, and later on Dr. Scott Atlas and CDC, Redfern, the CDC director then, and who, God knows who all. You could ask them questions, generals, the vaccine guys, Operation Warp Speed. You could ask them questions. They went through data every day. Joe Biden or Kamala Ho never come up with any charts or evidence or data, or barely let you ask them a question or question any of these. When is the last coronavirus press conference come under Joe Biden? With Joe Biden there, with the staff and everybody else, facing and answering the reporters' questions. It does not happen. Because they're not going to let it happen. Because this is what happens. This is Joe Biden. His whole press conference on the YouTube, 9 minutes and 14 seconds. And only 6 minutes and 52 seconds on this. He was going to leave the podium, but a reporter ramped up a question about why are you wearing a mask if you're declaring that if you've been vaccinated and you're outdoors, what the hell are you walking out to the podium with a mask on? Here's the reporter's question.
Thank you all very, very much. Bye-bye.
President, if the risk is so low outdoors, why doesn't it apply to everybody?
Wait, would you have any preconditions before meeting with Vladimir Putin?
One at a time.
If the risk is so low outdoors, why doesn't this new guidance apply to everybody?
Because the science indicates that the most certain way to make sure it doesn't spread if both people have been vaccinated, the people you're with, and you're outside.
And you chose to wear a mask, sir. You chose to wear a mask. You chose to wear a mask as you walked out here. What message were you sending by wearing a mask outside alone?
By watching me take it off and not put it back on till I get inside.
Do you have any preconditions before meeting with Vladimir?
Now, that was about the stupidest statement I have ever heard. After he got, well, what's the difference? Where's your science and data, Joe? You're walking out with a mask. What type of message was sent? Joe Biden wouldn't say it because he knew he would be crucified for it. If he answered it honestly, I'm signaling to you, you're going to be wearing masks for as long as I'm sitting in this White House. And if I can make it even after I'm out of this White House, that's what it's going to be. We got you by the short hairs, is what Joe Biden was sending while he's walking out with a mask. Notice the Joe Cool sunglasses he puts on as he was getting ready to walk out. And then after he got caught, answering, look at what I do when I walk out on the deal. That's only the Putin question came on next, which this is it. Here we go.
Vladimir Putin.
I'll discuss that all another day. Thank you.
What did you ask Vice President Harris to do?
AstraZeneca, will you make it faster for them to get the vaccine? The vaccines we will get soon. India, they're suffering at
What do you
this
say to the
moment.
folks in
Will
India?
you make
Look,
it?
I'm sorry. This is the last question I'll take, and I'm really going to be in trouble.
Let's stop right there. He ducked the Putin question because he's in up his eyeballs in the whole Putin thing when Hillary was running and he was vice president with Barack, and they were trying to undermine the Trump campaign. On top of that, he was caught lying about the whole Putin situation, trying to act like a tough guy when Putin called him out. He ran under the desk, running this politically correct rhetoric. And now you're hearing this stuff about India. let's pick up on this. Now that it's exploding back in India, the coronavirus is coming on this. The report after he ducks this. This is Joe Biden on India.
With regard to India, I spoke at length with Modi, the Prime Minister. We are sending immediately a whole series of help that he needs, including providing for those remdesivir and other drugs that are able to deal with this and prevent, in some cases, but help recovery. Secondly, we are sending the actual mechanical parts that are needed for the machinery they have to build a vaccine, and that's being done as well. We're also I've discussed with him when we'll be able to send actual vaccines to India, which will be my intention to do. The problem is right now we have to make sure we have other vaccines like Novavax and others coming on probably, and I think we'll be in a position to be able to share vaccines as well as know-how with other countries who are in real need. That's the hope and expectation. And I might add, when we were in a bind at the very beginning, India helped us. Thank you.
Sir, what have you asked the Vice President to do to help?
So there you see him walking off
How do you convince those still?
in that, on the deal, with no mask on after he was caught. But remember when he first said that last question, he said, I'm going to get into trouble for doing this. Because he said, remember remdesivir or whatever the drug is? Kelly Victory's mentioned it many times. Remember how Biden and the left jumped all over Trump, hydrochloroquine or whatever it is, remdesivir, all that stuff they were talking about. Oh, Trump's going to kill us all in the bleach and all that, yada, yada, yada. If remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine, I think is the name, and all that stuff is so bad for you, then why are you sending it over to India or saying, well, that might be a preventative? When Trump was saying it, you'd have thought he was trying to kill us all. The way they were going at it. Double talk and double standard, total 100% piece of crap. Joe Biden, from his racist days, is acting like a tough guy when he's got backup, to now will not stand there. Trump stood there sometimes for 2 hours at a press conference during coronavirus. This guy can't spend 9 minutes once every 2 months or whatever it is answering questions, showing us the evidence you have behind, just like when Gavin Newsom was called out in court by the San Jose Mercury News. Said, the San Jose Mercury News editorial board said, quit playing Californians like fools. We can extrapolate that to Joe Biden as the President of the United States. Quit treating the United States citizens as fools, Joe Biden. And that's what you're doing with your mask mandates. Your little, oh, well, you can go outside if you've been fully vaccinated, but if you're in a large crowd, well, we can't have that. Probably because if you had a large crowd, let's say at a basketball game, they would probably have to have military armed guards to describe the biggest POS in sports history, LeBron's James. And the LeBron's is because when he was on the Olympic team, the U.S. got a bronze medal with all the superstars of that. LAPD officer Devon Joseph challenged LeBron James, accountability, and we're watching you threat to that brave police officer that shot that perpetrator that was getting ready to stab another woman. He said, he wrote him a letter and said, let's sit down and talk. See if we can work this out. So far, LeBron's has had no response. Like he did with the riots and everything else, and when the L.A. Villanueva said, hey, LeBron's, why don't you buy some new cop cars like Shaq did when they were tearing stuff up during the riots? Silencio from LeBron's. This is the Fox 11 News Report with Devon Joseph and issuing that challenge to LeBron James. Said, I'm an LAPD officer. We'll get more of them. We want to hear your good ideas on how this goes. Here's the Fox 11 report. Here we go.
Felt compelled to reach out to James after the NBA star sent out this tweet stating, "You're next. #accountability." It was in reference to the Ohio police officer who shot and killed a 16-year-old girl as she was attacking another girl with a knife.
Describe how you felt when you read his tweet.
Well, it was disheartening because that could have been me. You know, there's been 4 times in my career where I was this close to having to use deadly force. And I just remember each of those times I didn't sleep for 2 days because literally on my knees every morning I pray that that's something I never have to do.
James, who has been critical of law enforcement, is demanding accountability for police brutality. Officer Joseph tells James he understands that frustration.
You're tired of black folks dying? So am I. You hate racism and police brutality? So do I. But you cannot paint 800,000 men and women who are of all races with such a broad and destructive brush.
What has been the reaction to your letter?
Surprisingly, it's overwhelming. You know, sometimes I post things, blase. Posting things is my therapy. Okay? If I don't get out what I'm feeling, I'm probably going to have a stroke.
Joseph doesn't know if James will ever read his letter, but he would love to one day sit down with James to talk about the reality of police work.
Even if not me, please take the time to talk to a police officer instead of judging him. No shade. Thanks for all the positive things you do, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I do.
And we reached out to LeBron James' PR group, but no one got back to us. If you would like to read the entire letter, it will be up on our website. Alex, Christine, I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
No response to the LA police officer's plea, or Fox 11, or anybody else. The LAPD officers, LeBrons, are not telling you how to play basketball because you're much better at that. Maybe you should refrain from telling police officers how to do their job because they are much better at it by probably 10,000 times than you at basketball of doing the job as a police officer. You have no idea, barely, well, maybe not no, barely any idea what it's like. Like I said, I would never want to be a cop. The 98% of the 7% of the time, they're showing up on the scenes to a sheet show. Yo, something's going wrong or something. That's what they're dealing with all day. They got to deal with the crime and the murderers and the rapists and the druggies and the homeless and the whole gamut, shoplifters, people calling them names, you know, like the one individual was at the Columbus deal was calling the cops at that, using all sorts of, you know, very choice words at the cops. And the cop who shot the perpetrator who had a knife that was getting ready to stab another human being. This is what you get. What's the old stay in your lane? LeBron, stay in your lane. Play basketball. Or if you want to learn what police work is out, here's an idea. Why don't you become a reserve officer? I bet you they would accept you. You could go out one day a week and actually be a cop and see what goes on out there. See what you have to deal with, and then see if you're going to tweet out threats or your little accountability or your Black Lives Matter racism or whatever you're trying to accomplish. Because it ain't happening here. You have, again, your credibility on this issue is like minus 9,431. It ain't happening. Again, all you're doing is really showing racism and that you harbor to this day. And you're not about solving problems. You're not about fixing the community where this violent crime is happening. Whatever, you're working with the establishment to perpetuate violence coming back and forth.
1 minute.
It's that. And you go each day we do this, and it will not stand, LeBrons. No way, no how. We're not going to let you dismantle our police officers, push your BLM racism.
30 seconds.
Else. It's not going to stand. Of that. In that. It never will. There is no way we're going to let you or anybody like you or your thugs that you have patrolling the streets.
Here we go. 10 seconds. .com.
OEM Supply King. We got it!
IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
As we kick off our Taco Tuesday on the Mighty Met KMET, going back and forth on this day, and as we promised, we'll get right into it because we got him on the line and we know his time is very valuable. We have the great assemblyman from up in Rockland, California, who along with James Gallagher sued draconian executive orders and won in court. That case was on appeal and was just heard recently. We'll get an update on that, but we'll get him in and talk about the recently certified recall. Assemblyman Kevin Kiley, welcome to IE Newswire with Roy.
Thanks, Roy. Always great to be on.
Man, what a happy day. The secretary, I bet you that Shirley Weber had to be, that was probably the worst moment or the most hesitant moment she's ever had. She had to go out and announce that there is enough valid signatures to put the recall of Gulag Gavin Newsom on the ballot, Kevin Kiley.
Well, yeah, I mean, and of course she was directly appointed by Gavin. Well, usually we have an elected Secretary of State, but she was appointed because our prior Secretary of State was appointed U.S. Senator. Of course, we usually have an elected U.S. Senator as well, and there's actually a constitutional requirement for that, but Governor Newsom apparently viewed that as optional. So that's where we are. But, as you say, it's an exciting day for California and just truly an astounding achievement by, the thousands of volunteers who were out gathering signatures every week, putting in countless hours and and the millions of people who signed. We've never seen anything like this in this state or really in the whole country.
I got to give I got to give a shout out to Riverside County, because I believe with the stats come in, and right now if they hold, Riverside County per capita will have more signatures than any county in Southern California. So I got to give a big props to everybody listening to us in Riverside County, because you're a big part of why this is happening, how it is, and the fun is just beginning. Talk about this little provision. They were trying to pop the deal where they could get and see who signed on the recall petition, but they were there's a 30-day period where you can have, and that's, I don't know exactly when this triggers, but it should be right here pretty soon, where you can take your signature, you can have and sign and have your signature taking off the petition. Explain that little part of the recall law.
Yeah, well, this is actually new. This didn't exist until a few years ago. And what was happening in 2017 is there was a state senator facing a recall named Josh Newman. And he had voted for the gas tax. And so the legislature and Jerry Brown wanted to try to bail him out somehow. And so they passed this law to just drag the whole process out, to make it harder to recall someone by lengthening the process. And in fact, they dragged it out so much that the recall got combined with the primary election that year. So it wasn't even its own special election. And one of the things they added to make the process take longer was this period where if you signed, you now have a chance to withdraw your signature. So that became law in 2017, and it applied to that recall of Josh Newman, and it applied to all future recalls. Now, the recall of Josh Newman was successful. However, he then came back and won his seat back in 2020. And now it's Newman himself that introduced this bill dealing with exposing people who have signed, because even though you're allowed now under current law to retract your signature during this window of time, for Gavin Newsom and his team, it's kind of hard to get people to do that because they don't have the list of who signed. So they have to just kind of contact people in mass and hope that they somehow manage to find the right people and convince them to retract it. So Newman came up with this bill saying, well, actually, we're just going to hand over the full list to Gavin Newsom, but the public backlash against this was so strong that he has withdrawn the bill, at least for this year.
And again, I got to give props to the people of the state of California who just raised holy heck about that when I think it was SB 663 that Josh, and I don't want to say what I'm really thinking, Newman, of that, introduced that bill to try and go at that. And that was particularly, the only reason to do that is to go after the 2.1 million plus that signed that and go after them politically. There was no other reason to even introduce legislation for that. That was the intent behind it. Tell me I'm wrong.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they use the list to harass people and try to bully them into withdrawing their signature. And then, for any future recall, it would be a major disincentive to sign because, they'd probably want to make an example of those people who did and retaliate against them, using whatever powers of some government are at their disposal. I mean, imagine people who are state employees, who signed the recall and now might face retaliation. Even the Senate Elections Committee, which is obviously Democrat controlled, the committee analysis cited this, fear of retaliation as something that would discourage people from signing recalls in the future. So, it's just another blatant attempt to undermine the recall process and to further insulate politicians from any sort of public accountability.
Note to Gavin Newsom, who's trying to frame this as, it's a bunch of right-wing white supremacist Republican recall, L.A. County, about 10 million people, would be the 10th or 11th largest state in the United States of America if it was its own state. More Democrats, of my information, than Republicans in Los Angeles County signed the recall petition for Gavin Newsom. That does not bode well for Gulag Gavin, Kevin.
Well, yeah, and what we know is that hundreds of thousands of people statewide who are not Republicans, either independents, Democrats, or something else, signed the petition. I mean, I talk to folks all the time who say they've never voted for a Republican in their life, but that this last year has given them reason not only to recall Newsom, but to really do what they can to help bring about fundamental change in California. Because the failures that exist at our state capitol, and in particular by this governor, aren't truly partisan or ideological in nature. They're failures of corruption and incompetence and betrayals of the public trust. And so I think that people of all party affiliations are coming together around the idea of ending this era of corruption and returning to the sort of things that made California such a great state to begin with.
We're talking with Assemblymember Kevin Kiley from Rockland, California, one of the main providers of the impetus to recall Gavin Newsom, and wrote a great book, Recall Gavin Newsom, The Case Against America's Most Corrupt Governor. Go out and read a copy of that, go out and buy it on that, and support guys like Kevin Kiley on this, because this is, and I don't mean take him out physically, but there's the old saying, if you're going after the king, you better take him out. No matter what, if you don't recall Gavin Newsom, he will be so empowered, and the supermajority, 2/3 of Democrats, if you think we've been in deep trouble in the past couple of years of this, if we don't get Gavin Newsom out of office, we are really in big trouble, in my opinion. Kevin Kiley, what do you say?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think that the last year has shown us what Newsom is capable of. I mean, as bad as things have been in California, we've been on this long-term sort of decline as a state. He managed to bring that to a total freefall. He took all of the problems with our state government and just absolutely put them on steroids. And so there's no saying what he would do if he had another year or, God forbid, another term. But, one of the things that I'm saying, as I'm talking with folks who might be on the fence about the recall for one reason or another, is that, because the process has been dragged out because of the chicanery of politicians, it is actually occurring just a year away from the next general election now. And so, you can consider it a test run. Let's elect someone who's a good government reformer. Let's try things differently. And if you don't like the way it works out, then we can go back to the political racketeering model next year. But give it a test run.
I like that on that. We're going to shift gears on that because you and your colleague James Gallagher sued Gavin Newsom on his on one of his draconian executive orders that he's issued in the past years, and you won in court. Gavin Newsom and the crew appealed that. You had the hearing recently before the appellate court of the state of California. Give us an update on the Gallagher-Kiley versus Newsom case.
Yeah, so we had our long-awaited oral arguments before the Court of Appeals last Tuesday. It was done on Zoom, which, was frustrating because between James and I, we only got 15 minutes to start with, and it's pretty common. The justices are constantly interrupting you, and that makes it even choppier when you're doing it over Zoom. So, it wasn't the sort of back and forth that you might hope for, but we had the hearing, and now we are just waiting for the decision to come down, which I think we should receive in a matter of weeks. I think that Newsom has always viewed this appeals court, the Third District Court of Appeals, as his most favorable forum, as the court where he has the best chance. So, regardless of the outcome, I think this will ultimately be decided by the California Supreme Court. And while it might not, at the end of the day, produce a decision that reins in Newsom for this state of emergency, or at least I hope it's not still going on. It will be a very important precedent for any future so-called emergency, because pretty much anything can be a state of emergency in California, that we cannot ever again just revert to this sort of pre-modern autocratic model.
You bring up a very important point of that when you say, the choppiness, how it is trying to present a very important case like this before a appellate court, which has not only ramifications for the Pacific Executive Order, but once the appellate court stamps it, then it can be set as case precedence, and you could use it for a lot of other things on that. But to talk more on that of how, because you're an attorney, you've probably argued many cases of that. It's very important that you have that court presence and you're able to have that interaction back and forth. And you lose that over the Zoom deal of that. Like you say, it's hard to put that together. And to have such an important issue like that and not have it under the most optimum circumstances we can, not only in this case, but if we keep it up, it's going to have some long-term effects that I don't think are going to be very good. Kevin Kiley.
Yeah, that's right. So that was disappointing. I felt like the issue merited the kind of interactive back and forth and dialogue that you really need, an in-person experience for. And if anyone's ever watched a Court of Appeals hearing, whether in person or on Zoom, the justices are constantly interrupting you. You get a few words out of your mouth, and then they just cut you off and ask about something totally different than what you're talking about. So that's kind of challenging enough when you're actually in the courtroom, and doing it over Zoom was even more of a challenge. And there were technical problems for the first 3 minutes. One of the justices apparently couldn't hear anything, so then they had to start the hearing over. And, we're talking about a very large courtroom that would have only had to have the 3 justices and 3 attorneys in it. So it's hard to really see what the safety risk was, but that's the way they've been conducting their business since this all began. And so, we just have to kind of go along with the way they're doing things.
Yeah, and that even makes it more important that we recall Gulag Gavin Newsom out of this office so we can stop this madness. Because I, for one, and I've listened to appellate courts and Supreme Court justices, and there's a lot of back and forth. Well, hey, what about this scenario? Back and forth on that. It really, if you're a geek about the stuff, it's really fascinating. Of the back and forth you go on, and it is, and it needs, and that really needs to go on, especially in these cases. Because like I said, and you stated, they have far-reaching effects not only to the case at hand, but in future cases like this. And if we want to stop these emergency orders from just being randomly used to control our daily lives in ways I think 98.7% of us are pretty fed up with, if nothing else, this is a great reason on why we need to eliminate this living hell, for lack of a better term, we've been in, going on almost 14 months. I think, wasn't it March 4th that he signed the first executive order declaring a state of emergency or something?
Yeah, I think that's right. So you're right. We're coming up on 14 months.
Isn't that ridiculous? A state of emergency. When has we ever had a state of emergency on anything that lasted 14 months in a state in the United States?
Yeah, and it's especially egregious when you look at what that term actually means in the law, the Emergency Services Act. It doesn't just require that there's some threat out there in order to have an ongoing state of emergency, but also you have to show that local jurisdictions are not capable of handling things on their own. And what I've been saying for a long time, and a lot of other people have been saying, is that we kind of know the deal at this point about how this virus works. And so there's not a lot of reason for the state to be ordering people around in terms of, the way they live their daily lives. People can make their own decisions, and communities can make their own decisions. We don't need one state government and, actually just one person making them on behalf of 40 million people.
We got a couple of minutes left. You got any other tidbits, news, legislation up there we should be aware of?
Well, there's a lot of, not great legislation, as you might expect. And, the Capitol has just become, a pretty farcical, replica of representative government. The Capitol itself has been completely closed since this all began. Members of the public cannot come in and they to see the building they pay for. If you want to attend a hearing, of a committee, they'll only let in a few people, and they escort you up like you're a prisoner. And then if you want to call in as a member of the public and state your position on a bill remotely, most committees are cutting that off after 10 minutes. And so you'll have hundreds of people maybe waiting on the line. They don't get a chance to testify. To make matters worse, the Assembly has empowered its committee chairs to simply refuse to hear bills at all. So a lot of very important bills, like the bill I authored to ban vaccine passports, they're not even giving it a hearing. This is happening, by the way, to Republicans and even some Democrats alike. And so you have a legislature that is, really kind of a sham institution at this point. It is not one that is shaped by deliberative values and by, anything resembling really representative democracy. It's simply a vehicle for putting, the will of special interest groups into effect and giving it the force of law. Of course, that's the same thing that motivates this governor more than anything else, and it's actually one of the reasons why one-man rule has worked out pretty well for special interest groups, because they don't even have to bother with the legislature. They can just tell Newsom what they want him to do.
You got it. Kevin Kiley, get his book, Recall Newsom, The Case Against America's Most Corrupt Governor, great assemblyman from one of the few left in the state of California. We'll do it again. Thanks for being on. We'll do it again real soon, Kevin.
My pleasure. Thanks, Ryan.
You got it. That was Assemblyman Kevin Kiley from Rockland, California. On that, again, get his book, Recall Gavin Newsom, The Case Against America's Most Corrupt Governor. On that, get prepared, because we got to get rid of Gulag Gavin. There is no choice in this instance. Absolutely none. It's like I say, if we leave him in, we are in more. Deep Bandini doesn't start to even explain what type of trouble we're in on if Gavin Newsom is still in there. Now, well, the latest PPCI poll said, they said 50 some odd percent, 52% were inclined to the recall, before only 40% were. But almost the same percentage, 56% of California residents in the same poll said it's time to change the governor in 2022. Well, why wait? I'd like to talk to that percentage in there, that whatever it is, about 16%, wasn't for recalling him right now, but thought he shouldn't have a second term. He hasn't done enough damage yet. Besides the COVID, the $31 billion in in unemployment fraud, and the actual people that were legitimately thrown out of work that are not getting their money. Well, what the rapper dude was claiming, he got $1 million, running the con deal. We're sending it to prisoners and everything else. On top of that, the latest fiasco, the whole bullet train thing, our roads, the whole thing on the roads. Now they're saying, well, we got to increase the gas tax more. All that, it was going to be okay. We'll just pass this raise in the gas tax on this back in 2016. It'll all be, or 18, whenever it was. It'll all be okay. We'll fix all the roads. Man, it'll be like 1960 and 70. Be able to go anywhere. You bet. 70 mile an hour from Moreno Valley all the way, less than an hour into downtown Los Angeles. Then they just recently came out with the report. We blew all the money. We didn't fix the roads. And now we need to raise the gas tax more. On top of stopping fracking and oil drilling in California, raising the highest energy, gas and electricity prices in the nation. And doing that, as the experts said, that immediately will jump gas 30 cents a gallon in the very near future. Like I said, $5 a gallon gas is coming in California. And those of you in the rest of the nation, you're going to get it next. Because like I said, we're the crash test dummies for the other 49 states. Get in here and figure all this stuff out and say, oh yeah, well, okay, this worked, this didn't, we'll have to fix that, da-da-da-da-da. Once they get it perfected in California, climate change, global warming, bullet trains, putting you in a little cubicle, homeless all over the place. running natives out. You know, we lost a Senate seat. I mean, a Congress seat. Texas and Florida gained 2. Yet Newsom's over there saying Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis are irresponsible for allowing their citizens to live, while you and Joe Biden and your evil twin governor, Cuomo, and the crew are plotting against us each and every day. Again, this is part of the, and we got to get rid of this stuff, of the dominant media. Flip up number 4 real quick, please. It's in the San Diego Union Tribune, which used to be a great paper. Governor Gavin Newsom to face recall election as Republican-led effort hits signature goal. Republican-led effort. Let's go a little bit of facts. This recall effort was started by Orrin Heady, a retired cop. It had many volunteers, grassroots, regular everyday citizens, lunch pail toting folks across California. By the tens of thousands were getting signatures on this. The Republican Party had nothing to do with it. Whether it's Rescue California or they didn't come on board until the extension came on and after the French Laundry deal, and then they smelled blood in the water. Then the Republican Party finally endorsed it and put some muscle behind it. But the vast majority of the signatures were gathered by the citizens of the state of California. It was not a Republican-led effort. It was a grassroots effort led by the citizens of the state of California that are just flat sick and tired of living in Gavin's gulag. And we ain't going to take it anymore. And if you don't think that is it, then just go, you ought to call up the editorial board at the San Jose Mercury News and ask them, why did you say you're playing Gavin Newsom, you're playing the citizens of California like fools, lying about this, that, and the every other thing. No science, no data, no nothing. You're just on a big power trip. And you're working as a tool of the establishment to kill California, and working in conjunction with Joe Biden and the globalist goofballs that want to destroy America as we know it. I don't know what more evidence you need. It cannot be clearer as the sun coming up in the morning of what's going on out here. That's why it makes it more imperative. Those of you that are in that middle section, well, don't recall Gavin Newsom, but maybe we'll replace him in 2022. Not no, but hell no. We can't endure any more of this. How much more of this madness or can you stand? I, for one, not a second more. And again, once we straighten this stuff out, we've got to get to the point of not letting the con artist establishment deal us this misinformation campaign, sit there and lie to us day after day after day. From the President of the United States, number 46, to the evil twin governors, Newsom and Cuomo, we're done with you. We're done with your lies. We're done with your phony science. We're up to you, and we're going to get rid of you at the ballot box one way or the other. And we're going to put some freedom and liberty-loving folks in there and get back to the U.S. the way it was and the way it was supposed to be as designed in 1776. We'll be back tomorrow on Wicked Wednesday in 23 hours. See ya!